Good morning, tribe. Let's just take a moment to take a deep breath and release the external world. Connect to our inner world, to our divinity. And after your deep breath, just become the observer of your breath. Notice how you breathe in and how you breathe out. Welcome. So today, I had to have a dream to come up with this jewel. And I've titled it, Don't Assume, Presume, or Suppose. 3 words that are really words that we need to throw out of our vocabulary. Do not assume, do not presume, and do not suppose. And the way it came to me in the dream was I was doing this throughout the entire dream. And it was such a loss of energy because honestly, all I needed to do was to ask. It's kind of when people say, I didn't call because I assumed, or I presumed you were busy since, or suppose you were sleeping or busy or whatever. What's happening is that we're not communicating. We are losing, as much as we have phone and texting, we're really not using the technology we have to communicate properly. And there is something that is behind it. What is really behind the veil of what stops us from speaking up or communicating? That is really the question. Have you ever felt like you wanted to connect or say something but didn't? Because you either didn't have the courage or you felt it was not in your comfort zone. Some of us are uncomfortable. We're a little bit awkward about speaking our truth, communicating, picking up the phone, making a connection. Where does this come from? What makes us uncomfortable? So obviously I'm not speaking to everybody. I'm speaking to probably there even, I just want to say, there are even people who all my life I've thought they never had an issue with this. And then they have confessed to me privately that they were always uncomfortable and frightened to put themselves out there. So I think what's required for us is to go back in time to a tender age of 3. At 3, you are pure intuition. You're in your essence and you know who you are. There's no doubt. There's no need for someone else to tell you how to think, how to perceive, how to act. Yet that is the rub right there. Because for generations going on, almost for forever, our parents have corrected us constantly. Not only our parents, but our teachers. And then we've come to a point where once we enter into life, we're so insecure, we don't even know who we are. So what ended up happening is that instead of trusting your own intuition, opinion, gifts, perception, you were forced to trust something outside of yourself. No wonder we are so zint up. So I came up with a 4-letter word. Instead of the F word, I'm using zint, Z-I-N-T. So I need a little feedback on the word zint. No wonder we are so zint up. I was sharing a beautiful moment with a soul from our tribe. She is extremely intuitive, and yet she was having so much difficulty listening to her intuition, understanding how brilliant and sharp and on point her inner guidance was, the guidance of her and the voice of her higher self. Now, what is that about? And I'm not pointing anyone out. This is all of us. This is me. I'm talking about myself. She's a mirror for me. it took me a long time to understand how psychic I am. I never realized I'm so psychic. If I think the word should be thrown out too. Psychic is not a good word either. I like intuition because that's what it is. We somehow have learned to drown out this divine guidance and assume some other truth. So, as a curiosity, you should look up the definition of the 3 words: assume, presume, and suppose. And you start to realize that some of our language is really created in a way to usurp our power. So I think what needs to be done, really, I mean, I know that in when you do hypnosis, you can do a session in hypnosis where you can go back to some key moments in this life, in your childhood, in this life, where you gave up your power. Where you gave up your power. It could be a moment where someone placed a seed. It could be an adult that might have said something. Sometimes we don't, as adults, I have children. I know I must have said so many things that might have traumatized my kids on levels that I might not have a real understanding of. Because we're so powerful, our words are so powerful that when we say something, a young child places it somewhere in the subconscious mind, and at some point in a future date, it starts to create a little bit of a forest of imagination. I call it forest of imagination. The subconscious becomes a fertile ground for someone else's truth, maybe something said even in a moment of anger, to take root. And we can go back and actually weed them, pull them out, and restructure them. I've seen how incredibly powerful hypnosis can be in finding those moments that we can't remember with the conscious mind. It's buried somewhere in the subconscious, where our power was taken from us. And I keep saying, I come from loving parents. I had an amazing childhood. I felt loved always and supported by my parents. Yet, even when I think of my children, how much I tried to love and support them, I might have done this inadvertently, not realizing that I was taking their sense of power, self-worth, confidence, and ability to trust their own inner voice without realizing it. Something that hopefully we can learn going forward for future generations, to learn what behaviors really need discipline and how to walk that narrow line or that tightrope of when to correct and not correct, so that children can grow up being confident and understand their truth and their voice and their gifts that are unique to them. We really don't need to create little duplicates, citizens that are all thinking and feeling the same way. We always benefit from those blazing souls that come in and allow us to see and experience life in a different way. So I think I want to just end this with the part that I'm always interested in, the part about something must have happened to me in my childhood that I have a difficult time saying no. Raise your hand if you have trouble with this one. How many times have you avoided someone because you didn't want to say no? Or worse yet, how many times have you said yes when you really wanted to say no? I think that's the worst one, right? Saying yes because you didn't really want to say no. So talk about this is an important this is really important. And I had a little lesson in self love and self worth that really showed me what was left in me that I couldn't see. It was a moment that something crept up out of nowhere, and I said, "Oh my goodness." There was still something there that made me feel unworthy. And but the great news is when I have enough being at this point when these things come up that they're actually the remnants. There is what is left, the things that still have to come out to be oxygenated so that they can heal. And so I'm grateful for those moments. But I just wanted to share a little bit about that experience. And the reason I want to share the experience is so that you could see how easily something that can happen can creep up on you and can find a place somewhere in your psyche to bury itself until something happens at a later moment, and then it shows its face. So basically, I had a incident happen with a friend, and this was a time where I was basically homeless and trying to restart my life. I finally found employment, and I was ready to look for a place to live, and he offered me his space just for 2 weeks so that I could find an apartment. And I was so vulnerable at this point that it was difficult for me to say yes, because there was also, admittedly, an attraction between the two of us. We've had a long relationship over the course of about 8 years that I knew him, and we danced around a possibility of a relationship, but it didn't end up working out. I ended up getting married to somebody else, to my beautiful Howard, and lost him. I widowed. And so I felt very vulnerable, but I felt that I could trust him. And then something happened in the moment that it was kind of like he was always offering me a place to help me, and I always said no. But this time I said yes, and I think that it was the shock of that moment that I felt that something shifted. The minute I said yes, I think the weight of that vulnerability, of taking someone in that was so vulnerable and so fragile, which I was. I mean, I admittedly have to say I was. I think made him run for the hills, and I knew it. I had this intuition that something changed. So he said to me, "I'll call you back, and I'll let you know. He wanted to check on something. I think he wanted to find out when the cleaning lady was coming or whatever. And I was coming strictly as a friend, and he never called me back. And to me, it was like I already knew it. Even before he hung up the phone, I already knew he wasn't going to call me back, because at that point, it was clear to me. The shift in his voice, the energy, I knew that something frightened him in that moment. So a year went by. I ended up finding an apartment. I have a beautiful best friend I grew up with. Her space was very small, but she took me in. And about 2 weeks later, I have my own space. I move in. Every time I would pass this person's building, there was a little something in my gut that made me uncomfortable. There was something still there. I still wanted to go in there and say to him, how he made me feel. But I kept saying, "Oh, who cares? Like, why do I need to tell him how I feel? I just need to get on with my life." But every single time I would pass his building, it would bother me. And then one day by mistake, I called him. Maybe it wasn't by mistake. I was going through my contact list, and somehow I pressed a call or his name, and it called right into him, and I hung up right away, and he called me right back. So I had a obviously he asked me out right away. We went out for dinner, and it was not until that evening when I went home that I realized how humiliated I was about what happened a year ago. It's like at the time I was so vulnerable. There was so much that I had to do about getting my life back in order that I didn't process that moment where he didn't call me back, where I felt unloved. I felt that somehow he couldn't see me for who I really was. He can only see the woman who lost everything, who was destitute, and it was like it was like, wow, this really got under my skin. It went in somewhere and found a dark place to fester until this moment. And I had a cry. Oh my God, I cried that whole night because I felt unworthy. I felt like, oh my God, I really was hurt by that. And I've had my chance to really voice my truth with him, and we've mended our fences, and I think that I still think the world of him. And, I think we all have moments where, that this, both our parts, these are perfect examples of him being able to really speak his truth with me and tell me how he was feeling about bringing somebody into his life that was so vulnerable, maybe even because we skirted around a possibility of a relationship, and mine not being able to call him right away and say to him how I felt. So it's a perfect picture of what can happen. And to me, I've had a lot of responses. When I wrote this piece, people were like upset with him because he couldn't see my self-worth. He couldn't see me in the light that other people see me. But I found that it was a gift for me because it really showed me something. It taught me something. In the moment, a year later, when I realized how much I was injured by that moment, a year passed, and is how important it is to speak our truth and to show up for ourselves. It's really, really important that we speak our truth and show up for ourselves, and to do things as they come in the moment, in time, in present time. Because when we do it, then we don't have anything to fix later. Something doesn't have to crop up later. We take care of it. And I don't know, something happened magically from that moment. From the moment that I was able to say that I had this real moment with my self-love and self-worth, it really made me actually love myself and see my worth. That's what it did. It wasn't the opposite. And so I was very, very grateful for that. And ever since that moment, I've been able to say no. I've been able to speak my truth and realize that people want to know that. Like, I want to know people's truth. I want, when I say something to someone, that if they don't want to or like it, I want to hear it. I love that when I hear someone is honest and bold. And we need to all be who we are. We need to be honest and bold and love every part of us, even the parts that are not beautiful. Love every part of you. Okay, gang. Love you, tribe. We will connect again.